Hey everybody, it is Chris, and I've been looking at the 2024 Player's Handbook, and I am in the process of doing a series on the expectations for damage for various classes in the Player's Handbook. I've already done the Monk, and I've already done the Rogue. I'm going to touch on them a little bit in today's video, but today I'm looking at the Fighter, and as we get into those numbers, I am also going to get into the additional number of my subscriber count, which is sitting around 4,000 shy of 100,000, which is a big milestone. So if you would be willing to subscribe, if you're not subscribed already, I know most of you are, thank you. But if you are not, I would sure appreciate it if you would. Every subscription counts right now as I push for that 100,000 mark. But that's enough of that. Let's get into actual numbers here. So if we're talking about math and we're talking about damage capabilities of builds, and I don't want to talk out of my rear end, then I have to compare the numbers to something. And that's where this comes in. This graph right here is what I call the Warlock baseline. Along the bottom, we have levels that go from 1 through 20, and on the side, we have expected damage per round at those levels. DPR stands for damage per round. And this is what I call my Warlock baseline. And it is basically if you were to take a Warlock and you were to take Eldritch Blast and Agonizing Blast, and you were to increase your Charisma to a +4 at level 4 and a +5 at level 8, and you were to use the Hex spell with your bonus action to do an additional d6 of damage, and you were able to just maintain that all day long, then this is the damage you should expect on average with your Warlock. And I've used this for years and years as a baseline. So the idea would be that when I look at a build, I can graph out the numbers and compare it to the baseline and see how well it does. Now, the Warlock baseline has never been my consideration of excellent damage. Warlocks don't do excellent damage. I have done a subclassless Warlock here, no species traits that increase damage or anything like that. It's just a basic Warlock build. So I would expect any build that is supposed to deal somewhat relevant damage should be able to at least match, if not beat significantly, this number. Now, what I wonder, though, is with 2024, we're seeing a lot of changes to the feats and the class features and the spells that could affect the damage that these classes deliver. And we can look at these things and get gut impressions. It's another thing to actually punch some math, find out how much damage they do at each level, put it on a graph, and compare it. And I am curious whether my Warlock baseline is still going to be a good baseline in 2024. The thing about a baseline is it should be a starting point. That's what a baseline is. It shouldn't be the top level damage. But is this high enough to be a starting point anymore? That's what I'm wondering about. So as I did the Rogue and the Monk, I'm going to show you where they came up. So the Monk is in red, and the Rogue is in green. These are also subclassless, undefined species, basic builds. And what I can see from these numbers is that the Monk and the Rogue are extremely competitive with each other in terms of damage. Very, very close. And both very comfortably above my Warlock baseline, which suggests to me that in terms of damage, these two classes are fairly balanced against each other. Now, there are ways to build these classes where they do more damage, and I've shown examples of each Rogue and Monk and how you can exceed these numbers in those videos, my last two videos, if you haven't watched them yet. So today what I want to do is I want to take a look at the Fighter, chart the numbers, see if it is also comparable to the Rogue and the Monk, see if it's also well above the Warlock baseline. If everything's well above the Warlock baseline, I may have to select something else to be my baseline. Well, we'll see. I'm currently in the Fighter, And I will be doing the Barbarian, I will be doing the Ranger, I will be doing the Paladin. I'm not sure what other classes I'll do. I'll think about that. But I think it's going to be useful to get all those classes on this chart and really see where we are in 2024. But before we look at the 2024 numbers, I think it is also relevant to look at where we were. So what I've got here is a 2014 basic fighter build. And I have gone ahead and made a melee build. And I will say that if you wanted the most damage with a fighter, I think hand crossbow, crossbow expert sharpshooter was probably your best option for damage, because archery fighting style is so nice on that kind of build. But I'm going to be doing melee builds here with the fighter, so I wanted to compare apples to apples. That's why I've gone with the melee class here. So we're going to do a Polearm Master build that uses the glaive, and great weapon fighting is terrible, so I'm just going to take the defense combat style for the fighter. Fighters, of course, get extra ability score increases. So at level 4, we're going to take Polearm Master. Level 6, we'll take Great Weapon Master. These are the 2014 versions. Level 8, Slasher Feat, and get our strength up to 18. Level 12, we'll get our strength up to 20. And then I just took Lucky, Tough, and Mobile at 14, 16, and 19. I don't think I would really be looking at damage increasing feats at that point. I don't know how many more damage increasing feats there are. Maybe Sentinel would grab you some damage, but nothing that I'm going to be calculating here in this whiteboard math. And then whenever we do DPR, we have to assume things. DPR at best is a rough estimate of damage. No matter how meticulous you are with the math, because you are making so many assumptions, it's an estimate. So these are some of the things that I am assuming doing this math, and I like to be transparent about it before I show you any data. So I am assuming there is 4 rounds in a combat, 1 short rest in a 4 combat day, no outside source of advantage or disadvantage. So if you want advantage, you have to generate it yourself. Target armor class starts at a 14, ends at a 17, scales at the levels that make the math easy for me. The character, I assume, is in melee. I mean, sometimes there's an issue if you're making a melee character that you can't get to melee, then you're not delivering the damage you're supposed to be delivering. I'm assuming that we have gotten to melee. Polearm Master, I am going to assume provides a reaction attack on 1 out of 4 rounds. And that's just a guess. It could be higher, it could be lower. Great Weapon Master, I'm going to assume provides a bonus action attack on 25% of rounds. Again, that's just a guess. And I should also mention that with Polearm Master, we're going to have a bonus action attack anyways, but the bonus action attack delivers 1d4 damage with Polearm Master. If we get our Great Weapon Master proccing bonus action attack, then we can get our full weapon damage for that bonus action. That's why it matters. And I am going to assume that we will use Action Surge for the attack action, because you could use it for something else, but let's assume we're going to use it to make more attacks. So let's go through some math. So I have a DPR chart here. So I've got 3 columns. The first column is the level, so I'm going to go right from 1 through 20. Then features, this is just to remind myself of things that might affect the damage numbers. And then on the right, DPR, and these are my mathematical calculations. I like to show my work. However, I'm not going to go through this, number by number. You can see the numbers there. If you want to pause the video and check my math or see how it's done, you go ahead. I'm just going to go over results. So at level 1, we're at 5.4. Level 2, 6.1. Level 3, we stay at 6.1. Level 4, we're going to go to 10. Level 5, it's 15.7. Level 6, 19.9. Then it's still 19.9 at level 7. At level 8, we go to 21, and we stay at 21 at level 9 and 10. At level 11, let me just get it so I'm showing all the math. Level 11 is 27.9. Level 12 is 33.8. At level 13 through 16 doesn't change. Then at level 17, we're adding another action surge. We're up to 36.6. Same at level 18. Same at level 19. And then we get our final extra attack at level 20. And that brings us to 46 total. And what I do is I will take all the DPR. And then I add all 20 levels together. And I divide by 20 to give me kind of an average DPR. Over 20 levels of play. With the fighter, that ends up being 24.9, and that is 23% over the Warlock baseline. So let's look at it on a graph. So the dark green line on your screen represents the 2014 fighter with a polearm. And what we can see is at low levels, the damage is bad until we get Polearm Master. Once we get Polearm Master, we pull a little bit ahead of baseline, and then we get a little bit ahead of baseline after that. But it's never fantastic. Level 12 looks pretty good. Level 20 looks pretty good. But if we compare it to either the 2024 Rogue or 2024 Monk, it's doing very poorly. So the fighter definitely needed a boost if it was going to compete with these other classes that also got boosted. And it did. One of the things that really affects our numbers here are feats. You take Polearm Master and you don't get a +1 to strength. You take Great Weapon Master and you don't get a +1 to strength. These things pull you behind. And then it takes much longer. You got to wait until you get those ability scores up to where they need to be before everything starts working together. So there's a lot of steps before you have your build kind of working as you envisioned it working. Fortunately, with the 2024 rules, once you get into general feats, they're all providing an ability score boost. So as long as you're boosting the right ability score, and that's something that I'm going to get more into detail in future videos because it does affect certain classes and subclasses more than others. As long as you're increasing the right ability score, the feats are generally better. And I will demonstrate that very soon. But first, I was curious. During the playtest, I came to the conclusion that I thought, it looked like you could pretty much use any weapon in 2024 and make a build around it, and it would work okay. This is based on a number of playtest rules that have since changed. So that has changed my opinions on it a bit. But what I was curious is, could you make a sword and shield fighter and make it work with the 2024 rules? That's the first build I'm going to look at. That is not what I'm going to be considering, the 2024 fighter-based damage. You'll see why. But I do want to show you the results. So here's what a sword and board fighter would look like in 2024. Again, I'm not picking a species and I'm not picking a subclass for these base damage builds. We're going to take the longsword. It's going to give us the sap mastery. That's going to give us a defensive boost. It is not going to increase our damage. I assumed we would take farmer as our background, get the tough origin feat. Again, it's nice to have, not increasing damage. Dueling combat style at level 1 will give us a +2 to damage. I assumed did I fill in? Oh, I did fill in all the ability scores. You wouldn't have to. Really, the only one we have to fill in is strength because it's the only one that's going to matter for our damage. For ability score increases, this is what I did. So we got tough and fighting style dueling at level 1. I'm taking sentinel at level 4, increasing strength to 18. Taking charger at level 6, increasing strength to 19. I'm taking shield master at 8, and that's increasing strength to 20. And then I'm taking feats that don't necessarily increase our damage. Heavy armor master, speedy, and alert. I think they're good feats, so I'd probably take them on a build. And there's not really much in the way of additional feats that are going to increase the damage of a sword and board style character. Okay, so got to make some additional assumptions here. I said my chance to prone with the shield is 60% if we hit. Because you get the shield bash, that's automatic now. It's not a bonus action anymore. Chance of a reaction attack with sentinel, I said 25%. So 1 out of 4 rounds, we'll get a reaction attack from that. And I said change of using charger. That's supposed to say chance of using charger on the first attack 50%. I would assume it'd always be your first attack that you would use Charger for, and half the time you'd get it and half the time you wouldn't. In the playtest, it was really easy. In the playtest, you could just run around your enemy and you would get your Charger. Now you actually have to run 10 feet towards the enemy, which means if you are already in melee, you would have to back away, potentially taking an opportunity attack so that you could charge for your D8 damage. Probably not worth it. So I'm just assuming 50%, and that's an assumption, and it's a guess, but I think it's a reasonable guess. So we have the same lines on our chart here, level, features, and DPR. I'm going to focus on the DPR. So we're at 5.9 at level 1, 6.6 at level 2 and 3, 8.9 at level 4 as our strength increases and we get a potential reaction attack, up to 16.2 when we get extra attack at 5. Level 6 we get Charger and we go up to 17.7, same at level 7. Level 8 we get Shield Master and we go up to 18.9 because that might give us the prone condition on our second attack, which would give us advantage, right? Then level 9, 18.9, level 10, 18.9. Level 11, of course, we get another extra attack. We're going to go to 27.2, stays that way at 12. Level 13, we get Studied Attacks. Okay, so Studied Attacks. Actually, I should stop right here because I need to explain my math. So Studied Attacks is a feature that fighters get in 2024. It's a brand new feature. And basically it says that if you are attacking a target and you miss on an attack against them, your next attack against the same target has advantage. Okay? So how the math works on that is I've come up with a system for doing the math. So I'll come back to this. Hang on. So here's the math for Studied Attacks. I've got here chance to hit, chance to miss, chance to crit, chance to not crit, and then I've just got some calculations. Here's your chance to hit with advantage. Here's your chance to miss with advantage. Here's your chance of a critical hit with advantage. And then I make an assumption. And the assumption, you got to make an assumption. The assumption I make is we are going to have a new enemy at the start of our turn, so there will be no Studied Attacks carrying over from round to round. But I'm going to assume the same enemy throughout the turn. So if, we were to drop, let's say we have 3 attacks, and we were to drop an enemy after the second attack, then if we go to a third enemy, then it wouldn't benefit from Studied Attacks. Now, you probably don't drop the enemy if you missed, but if you have something like the Gray's Mastery, you could, and then you wouldn't have advantage on the new target. So I'm assuming the same target for our entire round, and then I am assuming that a new target at the start of our next round. And that's the best guess I can make. So here's the chance of advantage through Studied Attacks. Attack 1, 0%. New target. Attack 2, it's chance to hit. And then your chance to hit is your chance to hit with advantage times your chance to miss. Then previous attack plus chance to hit without advantage, blah, blah, blah. There it is. That's how it works. Here's how the math works. Let's say we have a 60% base chance to hit, which is what I usually have in my calculations. So attack 1, we have a 60% chance to hit and a 5% chance to crit. Attack 2, we end up with a 70% chance to hit and a 7% chance to crit. Attack 3, we end up with a 67% chance to hit and a 7% chance to crit. And then attack 4, we get 68% chance to hit and 7% chance to crit. And a fair bit of math there for not a lot of changes. So to make my life easy, what I figured the simple math estimation would be all attacks after attack 1. Just give them a 68% chance to hit and a 7% chance to crit, and it's going to be pretty close, assuming you have a base 60% chance to hit. Okay? There's the math for Studied Attacks. So going back to level 13, Studied Attacks is now in play. And we're up to 28.4. All that for 1.2 DPR. And we stay at 28.4 right through level 16. Level 17, we get the additional action surge. That brings us up to 31.4. Same at 18. I took the Boon of Combat Prowess as my epic boon feat. That's the one where if you miss, you hit instead, but just once per turn. And I assume your chance of missing once is 69%. So I've added some damage for that. Furthermore, if we make a reaction attack, that will automatically hit because that's a different turn. And for Charger, I assume it's 100% going to do the damage as long as you can use Charger. Because if that first attack doesn't hit, it will. So Charger will always work. So that brings our DPR up to 40.4. And then at level 20, we add one more attack and we go up to 49.3. So let's take a look at this on the graph. The purple line represents the fighter with longsword and shield. And what we can see is basically lockstep with the Warlock baseline. The only time we really see a difference is level 17. The Warlock baseline jumps ahead because, of course, they're adding an extra attack. And then once the 2024 fighter gets an epic boon, it pulls out ahead. And once it gets its fourth attack, it pulls out a fair amount ahead. It actually ends up ahead of the 2014 fighter at level 20. But the rest of the time, it is well below the monk and the rogue. So I can't use this as my base fighter damage. It's way too low. Way too low. And what it tells me is sword and board is going to be hard. Hard to use. Now, I'll be looking at a shield build with my last build in this video, and that will be a different result. But if we're just picking up a sword and a shield and trying to make that work, I think you're going to have a hard time. With the subclass, you can increase this number a little bit, but it's just keep in mind that red and green lines are not assuming subclasses either. It's just far too low, I think, to be effective, which is too bad. I was hoping Longsword and Shield would be an effective build. It might be an effective build for other classes, but for the fighter, I don't think it is. So, let's go back to using a two-handed weapon. That's what we use with our 2014 numbers. Let's use a two-handed weapon and see how that does. So, once again, we're making a fighter. This time we are going to make what I say is a Greatsword quality of life build. Because one thing you can do with the two-handed build is you can take Polearm Master and then use something like a Halberd or a Glaive, and then you get that bonus action attack. The thing about bonus actions and fighters, especially in 2024, is they're probably going to have other things they want to do with their bonus action. Just from the base fighter class alone, we now have multiple uses of Second Wind that scale, so we'll actually have several uses of them eventually. Do we want to ignore that because we have Polearm Master and we have something else to do with our bonus action? By using a Greatsword, we keep that bonus action free, whether it's for Second Wind or it's for evasive maneuvers because we're a Battle Master, or it's for Misty Step because we're an Eldritch Knight, etc. So, Greatsword, and also I will say that because of the way Great Weapon Master feat works now, a Greatsword actually works quite well. You don't have to get that bonus action attack like you used to, and you'll see. One thing Greatsword gives us that will be massive is Weapon Mastery Graze. Looking at Weapon Mastery Graze, my gut impression was it wouldn't add a lot to damage, but it'd probably feel good. Because you miss, and okay, well I did 4 points of damage anyways. That feels good. What I did not count on is how much DPR Graze adds. Like with the 2014 build, I didn't take Great Weapon Fighting because Great Weapon Fighting sucks. In fact, it's worse than ever. So I took the Defense Combat style. Strength, I'm going to assume, is 17. The rest really doesn't matter. Ability score increases. So looking at this again, I might put these in a different order, but I'm not going to go through all the math again. So I'm going to leave it as is. This is what I did the math for. Level 4, Mage Slayer, great feat. And Strength 18 does not increase our DPR, other than increasing our Strength. Great Weapon Master at 6, which I think is a fantastic feat now in 2024. I think it is stronger than ever. Strength 19. Then Charger at level 8 brings us a Strength 20, and I gotta say, the more I do DPR builds with Charger, the less impressed I am with it. It's just not adding a lot. and it does not scale. The thing about Great Weapon Master, so Great Weapon Master is going to add our proficiency bonus to every attack we make with the attack action. So it doesn't apply to bonus action attacks, doesn't apply to reaction attacks. So it doesn't combine as well with things like Polar Master as it used to. But if you are a fighter, you're getting more and more attacks as you go up. So you're multiplying that Great Weapon Master damage. Furthermore, the Great Weapon Master damage is scaling because it's based on your proficiency bonus. So it starts at a +2, but it will eventually be a +6. So if we think about a fighter, just with 4 base attacks, we are talking about, 6 times 4 is 24 potential damage every round with no additional, resources spending or anything like that. That's just straight damage. That's level 20. But that's where we're headed when we get Great Weapon Master. It's very, very good. And that's not even considering the occasional bonus action attack it's going to give you. Heavy Armor Master, Speedy, and Alert, which don't increase our DPR, but I would probably take them. I think they're good feats. And Boon of Irresistible Offense at 19. So that's not the Boon of Combat Prowess that I took with the Sword and Board. I probably should have taken Boon of Irresistible Offense with that build as well, because we're using a weapon, and that weapon is going to have a specific damage type, and that damage type might be resisted. So if we are using a Greatsword in this case, it's doing slashing damage. If we come against a creature that has resistance to slashing damage, it will affect us unless we have the Boon of Irresistible Offense. So I'd probably take it for that. It increases our critical damage a little bit, actually quite a bit, but it ends up being not as big a slice of damage as Boon of Combat Prowess. But if you do not have a reliable damage type, I think I would probably go the safe route and take Irresistible Offense. Okay, so assumptions I think are pretty much the same. Did I add anything? In this case I did. Great Weapon Master provides bonus action attack on crits only, and this is why I decided to do that. I didn't actually do that with the 2014 build, but the 2014 build was not doing well already, so I didn't feel the need to go back and make it look even worse in comparison. But so Great Weapon Master provides bonus action attacks in 2 different situations. The first is if you score a critical hit, you get a bonus action attack, and the second is if you drop an enemy, you get a bonus action attack. However, if we're talking about the bonus action attack for dropping an enemy, we are spreading our damage to multiple targets. We're not talking about single target damage anymore. I'm not sure multi-target damage is relevant to our discussion. Furthermore, I'm making other assumptions assuming that we're attacking the same target the entire round, which would mean we definitely are not dropping that target. So there were a couple of reasons I felt I should switch it so it's only for critical hits. Action Surge, same thing. Charge on first attack 50% of the time. The math for studied attacks is the same. So let's get into the damage. All right, so level 1, we're going to have Graze. 7.8 damage. That's a fair bit more. Graze is giving us 1.2 of that. I'm just mentioning this because I told you Graze was going to deliver a lot of damage. And I mean, 1.2 when we're talking 7.8 is relevant. Then we got Action Surge, brings us to 8.8. Same at level 3. Level 4, our strength goes to +4. This is when we pick up Mage Slayer. And now we're up to 9.7 DPR. Extra attack brings us to 19.4. Then at level 6, we're getting Great Weapon Master, which is currently at +3. And we're getting a bonus action attack 10% of the time. And that brings us to 24.3. We stay at 24.3 at level 7. Then we're going to get Charger at level 8, and it's 28.2. Level 9, Great Weapon Master, brings us to 29.4. Level 10, we're still at 29.4. Level 11, we're getting an extra attack. Our bonus action attack goes to 14%. And now we are talking about 43.3 DPR. And when I talked about Graze, just take a look. It's 2 here. It's 2 here. It's a little bit here. It's a little bit on... Oh, sorry, it's 2 here, multiplied by 3, so that's 6. And then 2 more here, and then potentially 3 more there, or 6 more there. And it's just a little bit here, and a little bit here, and a little bit here, and a little bit here. And when I make this same build without grays, the DPR looks a lot worse. It's just enough. It's about 15%, but you drop DPR by 15%, you're gonna feel it, and you're gonna see it on a graph. Very dramatic. And so, yeah, grays is really paying off. Level 12, we're still at 43.3. Level 13, we add studied attacks and our Great Weapon Master scales, and our bonus action attack happens more often, and we're up to 48.4. And we stay at 48.4 for a while until we get to 17. And then we're going to go up to 55.7. And level 18 stays the same. And level 19, our critical damage goes up. And that brings us to 60.9. And at level 20, we get our final extra attack. And that, whew, look at all this math. All this math to figure that out. 81.3, that's a lot of damage. A lot of damage at level 20. If I add them all together and divide by 20, I get 36.2 as an average DPR value over 20 levels. But these single numbers I'm not a huge fan of. What I really like is looking at it visually on a graph. So let's do that. So, blue line, Warlock baseline. Green line, 2014 fighter, which wasn't looking so hot. The light green line is the rogue in 2024. The red line is the monk, and those two are lockstep pretty much from 1 through 20, just kind of going back and forth, but very close to each other all the way through. And then the purple line is the fighter build that we just went over. And look at where it ends up, just well above everything else. But what I will note is until level 11, it is very, very close to both the rogue and the monk. Well above 2014 because, for all the people saying -5 plus 10 being gone is a huge nerf, I don't think so. The give me a damage bonus without giving me a penalty to hit is extremely good, even if it only applies to the attack action. And so I'm not using bonus actions. That green line assumed using bonus actions for Polar Master and all that. And just look where the purple line is in comparison. Damage has gone up significantly. And then level 11 is where the fighter comes out ahead. The fighter is now number 1 for damage of all the builds I've done so far. And it stays that way right until level 20. At level 19, it's extremely close. The rogue and the fighter, just about, the rogue has a really nice level and catches up to the fighter, but then the fighter pulls ahead again when they get that 4th attack at level 20. So what I'm seeing is in tier 2 and tier 3, the fighter is a very effective damage dealer. At tier 1 and 2, it's pretty much lockstep with the other martial classes. And so it's going to be up to you to decide because, of course, remember with the monk and the rogue, there's other benefits to being a monk and a rogue. Whether those benefits outweigh the extra damage that you'd be doing with a fighter is up to you to decide. But that's what it looks like. One more build I'm going to show you. I debated whether to even show you this build because I kind of leapt off the diving board at the deep end of the pool and ended up in a situation where I was having a tough time. But what I wanted to do is I showed you sword and board, and I showed you it doesn't really work. And what I wondered is there any way I could make a fighter at least that uses a shield? So with all these videos, what I'm doing is I've been doing one build where I take a subclass and I optimize the heck out of it and see how it does. And with the monk, we saw we could get well over these numbers that I'm showing on the graph now. Same with the rogue. Can we do that also with the fighter? And can we do it with a shield? So this is what I came up with. And my name for this build is the Shillelagh Nightmare Math build. I changed the name. It was originally just the Shillelagh Champion build. But you'll see what I mean here. Okay, so we're going to be fighter. We're going to be a human, so we can get Magic Initiate Druid, then we can get Shillelagh, Guidance, and Jump. And with Shillelagh, what happens is you can cast it on a quarterstaff or a club. It's a bonus action. Doesn't use concentration. And I will be assuming on round 1, we will be using our bonus action to cast Shillelagh. Then what we have is scaling damage with the Shillelagh. It starts at a D8, becomes a D10 at level 5, D12 at level 11, then 2D6 at level 17. So I figured if we want to do everything we can to squeak out damage from a build that uses a shield, Shillelagh is a good way to go. The subclass I chose is Champion. Champions are good in 2024, surprisingly enough. They still get the increase to critical range, so they're 19 to 20 for a critical at level 3, and eventually becomes 18 to 20. And the fact is that does not deliver a whole lot of damage, and it still doesn't deliver a whole lot of damage. And the reason is because the adding additional weapon die and nothing else, not having smites or anything like that, means that crits don't do all that much more damage. So that's not a big advantage. But what Champion gets is at level 10, they get a Heroic Inspiration die at the start of their turn if they currently don't have one. And the way Heroic Inspiration works is it allows you to re-roll any roll in the game. So at the start of your turn, you automatically have Heroic Inspiration. You're going to be making attacks. And so if you miss, you'll re-roll, right? That's where you use your Heroic Inspiration and potentially hit. So that's a nice damage increase. And even if you use it on that, there's a reasonable chance that you will actually still have your Heroic Inspiration after your attack action is done, because you only use it if you miss. The Quarterstaff is going to give us the Topple Mastery. So the Topple Mastery, every time you hit, the creature has to make a saving throw as a Constitution save, or they fall prone. Then you can have advantage on all the rest of your attacks. Took the same background. I took the Dueling Combat Style for +2 damage. And we're going to go with a strength build. Now, the thing with Shillelagh is it allows you to use your casting stat to make attacks with, but you don't have to use your casting stat. With True Strike, you do. Shillelagh, you don't. So we can focus on our strength, and it's fine. Which is good, because we want some strength-based feats. So we're going to take Polearm Master at level 4. We're going to take Sentinel at level 6. We're going to take Shield Master at level 8. I didn't bother with Charger on this build. Charger just doesn't do much for you. I guess if you are dashing through difficult terrain a lot, then it does something for you. But the D8 damage, it doesn't end up looking like very much once we get it like on paper. Then we're heavy Armor Master, Speedy Alert, like I did with the other ones. And I took Boon of Combat Prowess. That gives us the extra hit because we do have reliable damage. Shillelagh does give us reliable damage. And Champion, what's it going to do? So our crit range is 19 to 20. We're going to have advantage on initiative, which is nice. And additional move after we critical hit. That's nice too. Additional fighting style at level 7. I would take defense. If we're going to put on a shield, we might as well stack up that armor class. Heroic Inspiration at 10. I went over that already. And then at level 15, our critical range goes from 18 to 20. This is a very solid subclass. It also creates a nightmare for math. So here is my math nightmare. Heroic Inspiration or Heroic Advantage is used on the first attack to miss. Chance of a critical with that attack is the chance of critical on the first roll plus the chance of a critical on the second roll times the chance of missing on the first attack. Studied attacks, Topple, and Shield Mastery may all provide advantage on the next, or, in the case of Topple and Shield Mastery, all subsequent attacks. We have to work that out, and they work differently. Topple works on every attack. Shield Master only works on one attack. We will assume that reaction attacks do not have advantage. We're going to assume the target is not already prone at the start of our turn. We are going to assume our first attack does not have advantage. We're going to assume all attacks on our turn are against the same target. We're going to assume 60% of targets fail a saving throw for Shield Master and 50% fail for Topple, because Topple is a Constitution save, and Shield Master, I forget whether it's Strength or Dexterity, it's not Constitution, which I assume will have a 10% chance higher of working. We will assume the enemy is not immune to the prone condition, because that would make a big difference. We're going to assume a reaction attack 25% of the time with Polearm Master and 50% of the time with Polearm Master and Sentinel combined. We're going to assume we need to use our bonus action on round 1 to cast Shillelagh, so no bonus action attack on Shillelagh. We're going to assume a 4-round combat. We're going to assume Action Surge is used to take the attack action as often as possible. And we're going to assume 8 rounds of combat between short or long rests. And since Action Surge occurs after the first attack action, scaling chances of advantage will be applied. Okay, so you can't just say that Action Surge doubles your attack action damage. It would be nice to say that, make things easier, but there's a really good chance when you take your Action Surge that the enemy will already be prone. And so to be accurate, I need to take that into account. Going to assume we're in melee. And by my understanding, if you read it differently, so be it. But by my understanding, the D4 bonus action attack granted by Polearm Master does not benefit from the increased quarterstaff damage from Shillelagh. So you're going to do with your attack action, you're going to do the bigger Shillelagh damage, but your bonus action attack is still a D4. Standard enemy armor class determined by character level gives a base 60% chance to hit at all levels, just like the other builds did. Okay, so we're going to have to go through a lot of text here, but we're going to start with 5.9 DPR at level 1, 6.7 DPR at level 2. Level 3, we go to 7.1. This is when we increase our crit range. You can see there's starting to get to be a fair bit of math. Then at level 4, okay, so now we got Polearm Master. It's only going to apply to rounds 2 through 4, so 75% of the time. That's why right here you're going to see it multiplied by 0.75. If you already have Shillelagh up, great. Okay. Also, it occurs to me that there's more than 1 round to a combat, so I probably should have had higher than 0.075, but I tell you what, I'm changing no math on this build. You'll see, I'm not touching the math on this build again. I'm going to assume Action Surge is on round 1. This matters because if we're making a bonus action attack and then another attack action, it affects our chance of the enemy being prone yet again, and our reaction attack is 25%. You can see there's a fair bit of math there. I don't even think it all shows on screen. I better reduce the size of this so you can actually see it. There, now it all shows on screen. DPR is 14.0. We haven't even got extra attack yet. Here's when extra attack comes in. And we're up to 25.1. Level 6, reaction attack 50% of the time. We're up to 27. Same at level 7. At this point, things weren't too horrible. Then we got to level 8. Then I got Shield Master. Then I have to determine, did the first attack hit? If so, did Shield Master work? If not, did Topple work? What is my chance of advantage on attack number 2? And then my bonus action attack, did either attack or 1 or 2 have 1 hit, in which case Shield Master triggers. If I attack twice, it only triggers once. If I didn't hit, then it doesn't trigger, but Topple triggers twice. And you'll see. On the left side there, or the middle column, I guess, is my attempts at coming up with the math. That's how much it is. This is level 8. And there's my calculations, and I came up with 30.6. Am I 100% sure that 30.6 is correct? Nope. Not 100% sure. I think I'm close on this one. I become less confident as we go up in levels. All right, level 9. I just gave myself a note that Tactical Master allows us to replace Topple with Sap, Slower Push, and if an enemy is already prone, that's what I would be doing with my attacks. But our DPR doesn't change. Level 10, we get the Heroic Inspiration at the start of our turn. This one sucks. This is not advantage. You're not getting advantage because you use Heroic Inspiration. You make an attack. If you miss, you use it. If you hit, you don't use it, and you save it for your next attack, and so on, and so on, and so on. So if we talk about a character who's 10th level, we got 2 regular attacks, Then we're going to do an action surge, so we could potentially have 4 attacks in the same round. That's assuming we didn't use our bonus action that turn to attack. Then I have a 100% chance of having Heroic Inspiration available on the first attack. And I know I've got a 60% chance of it being available on the second attack because I had a 60% chance to hit with the first attack. But knowing the chance that it's available for my third attack or my fourth attack, that is not easy. So here's what I came up with. It's on the center column. I think it's close. And there's the math, and I think our DPR is 36. And level 11, then we add extra attack. Oh my god, now we potentially have a 6th attack. So I have to work out all that. And all that. And all of this. And I came up with 53.2. Okay. Then level 13, friggin' studied attacks. Now I've got to put that on top of everything else. These are what I came up with for my chance of advantage for each attack. 0%, then to 69, 81, 87, 92, 95. This was all based on math that I am somewhat thinking is probably accurate. And then I have to go through all this math, and I get to 54 DPR. Then at level 15, crit range increases, and our chance of advantage on attacks has changed. And there's a whole bunch of more math, and we're up to 56.2. Then second action surge, and Shillelagh goes to 2d6, and then so I do all this math, and I get to 63.5. Then at level 19, the Boon of Combat Prowess. With all that, I have to figure out the chance that we had a miss, which I think I came up with as, what is the chance? 81%, I figured, because there's a lot of attacks. But there's the math, and I came to 74.4. And then we got an extra attack times 3. Now we potentially have 8 attacks in one turn. I need to figure out the chance of advantage on all 8 of them and calculate all 8 of them separately. And I come to 83.3. And that is a total of 821.5 divided by 20 is 41.1, which is good damage, like really good damage. I am going to show it to you on a graph, and then I'm going to give a disclaimer. The dark green line represents the damage figures that I just presented to you. And what we can see is very competitive till level 10, and then pulls away at level 11, even above the two-handed build. And then it stays ahead right to level 20, with even a reasonable gap, except for level 20 when the two-handed build catches up. Now my disclaimer. Take these numbers with a huge grain of salt. I have been doing DPR calculations for many, many, many years. Much longer than 5th edition's even been around. It's kind of my thing that I did DPR calculations long before they were common. And I'm very used to them. I feel like, and I hate to brag, I feel like I have a good head for math. I'm not a mathematician. I don't have a university education in math, or the only post-secondary math courses I took were financial stuff, like for figuring out compounding interest and that kind of thing, which I don't remember any of. So I'm basically working off high school math, but I have good instincts for probability. So I can usually come up with, I'll see, Savage Attacker. And Savage Attacker lets you roll the dice twice. I can figure out how or what the average result will be. I don't need somebody to tell me how to figure that out. I can usually just intuit it on my own and figure it out and come up with an answer I'm confident with. So for DPR calculations, up to now, I've never had a real problem. This is the first time where I really felt like I was just out of my depth. There were levels here where I'm trying to come up with equations, and I would come up with an equation that I think was right, and then the number looked all right when I got it all figured out, and then I'd do like 4 levels worth of work and realize that that equation is sending the number in the wrong direction, like it's getting smaller when it should be getting bigger. So I must have made a mistake, and then I go back and I figure out, oh, I put the chance of advantage here. I should have put the chance of not having advantage in this particular box. Well, I guess I got to change that. That changes all the math for all the 4 levels that I've done. I've got to redo it all over again. Hopefully it's right this time. Hours and hours and hours of just painstaking work. And I ended up with results that I cannot say I'm confident are correct. So the nightmare line, the dark green line, might be correct. But I would not be surprised if there are errors. So take that with a huge grain of salt. But I do think there's enough data there to say if you wanted to make a character that's a fighter with a shield, if you took Shillelagh and you took Champion, I do think you can get some pretty good numbers. Even if it's not exactly what I'm presenting here, though I'm hoping that these numbers are close. I'm hoping they're correct, but I'm not 100% sure. It was just I've never been in a situation where I've been working on DPR and I've just looking at something and going, I don't know what the equation is here to represent these 10 different factors affecting this same thing at the same time. And what it does tell me is the math for 2024, particularly for the fighter, is complicated. Just studied attacks is a significant jump in complication. That took me a little while to figure out. But I've got that one figured out. But you start throwing additional variables into the mix, and it gets difficult. So very difficult numbers to come up with. I think those are close. So I think you can make that build and make it work. And what it does tell me is there's lots of room for optimizing fighters. It tells me for sure. And how does that line compare to my optimized rogue build and my optimized monk build? Pretty close. It's pretty close to those builds, which again is good to see. So what my main takeaway from this video is not about the Shillelagh build. My main takeaway is that if we do, I'm going to be using that two-handed build as my base fighter damage. And what I can see is that the fighter is lockstep with the rogue and the monk until level 11, and then the fighter pulls ahead and stays mostly ahead to level 20, but not disastrously ahead, but a fair amount. They're both further from the warlock baseline than they are from the fighter. Okay, so that's the fighter DPR, and in my next video, I'm going to go over the DPR for the barbarian, and I am going to show you the highest DPR build I've come up with so far for martials. Spoiler, it's a barbarian. I hope you will join me for that video. Until then, I am going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone, and I will never do another Shillelagh champion build DPR again.